This is Rugby Unity. I am David Pembroke, and over the weekend I spent the whole weekend at a Benedictine monastery in reflection. And I went in on Friday night when the pistols were drawn. There was going to be a shootout at the OK Corral, France and South Africa versus the Southern Hemisphere, about all sorts of bad things in the game and depowering scrums, penalties, TMOs, red cards. But I come out on Sunday to the news that there is peace in our time and there will be no changes to the law and everything is okay. Ewen McKenzie, what did I miss?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. People must be watching a different game if they don't think there's anything to fix. There's not. You don't have to fix everything, but there's a few crucial things which we've banged on about for a while now. So I don't know. Obviously, it must be too hard. So that's a problem. I was going to get more of the same. We saw it on the weekend. Brumbies Blues, 27-18. Yellow card at the end of the game. Brumbies come back, score 2 tries in the yellow card period, win the game. So those sorts of things,
To read from the statement, no changes to the law. There was universal agreement that the on-field game is in a strong position across global and international competitions. Attendees also endorsed the 4 global trials currently in operation ahead of council consideration in June on their adoption into full law. The clear feedback from union and competition chief executives, players, coaches, referees, commercial and fan experts is that the on-field product is in a strong and positive place. The focus should therefore be on enhancements and advancements to unlock the full fan and commercial potential of the sport through the way the sport is presented, elevation of its personalities and fan experience. Eddie Jones, what is your view?
Well, I think if you watch rugby and you think it's in good health, then you're probably looking at the wrong things. Yeah, and the mere fact that they've come out and said, we'll try to address the commercial side of the game rather than look at the game itself. I just think they had too many people in the room. They couldn't make any decisions, so everything's good.
Well, there were 200 people.
200
joke,
people.
Mate. It's a joke. It's a joke. Like, the game needs to get sorted out. The game needs to get sorted out. We can all see that. But because they had so many people in the room in so many different areas, they couldn't come to a decision on anything. So they all hold hands at the end, have a gin and tonic. So it's all good.
Because if you have a look at the other key themes, celebrating the sport, closer alignment of laws and refereeing across competitions, and just in relation to that one, Ewen McKenzie, it says a focus on aligning laws and referee directives across elite competitions to improve fan understanding while recognising the need for some closed law trials. This includes evaluating the optimal scope and use of technology for the television match official. So again, I think it looks like the can has been kicked down the road a little bit further.
Yeah, it's hard to know what to say, really. I mean, you could have probably written that and saved the 200 flights, and the 200 hotel rooms. Because in the end, it's the same sort of broad brush statement you'd make anyway. You just say that. They would just say that anyway. The game's in good shape. Of course they're going to say that. Otherwise they look like they're doing a bad job. So, the fact that they just flipped it across to commercial and fan stuff. I mean, that's not even their charter. That's not even it's about the game itself. I would have thought they'd be talking about that. They shouldn't be talking about commercial things. Talking about the actual specifics of the game and can we make it better. Just to flip it off to the other side of the office, or it's marketing's problem now. They got to optimise it. That's just ridiculous. So anyway, annoying.
But interestingly, because I'm a little confused by this, because my understanding was that Mark Robinson had been given the responsibility to conduct a review of sorts, although we never saw any terms of reference to understand exactly what it is that he and I presume others working with him were actually looking at. But we were informed that he was to be taking some sort of review to the shape of the game, and there would be a discussion and perhaps decisions taken at the shape of the game that would then be taken to June to be endorsed by the council. But it looks like nothing. Eddie Jones, we've got nothing really, well, apart from the 4 trials that are underway at the moment in Super Rugby, and then the 2-year trial of the 20-minute red card. We might find out about that in June. Looks like what the upshot of the shape of the game conference is.
Yeah, so I think as Ewan said, there's really nothing to talk about. I think we predicted this at the start. Nothing had come out. It's like their strategic plan. It's just the whole organisation is incapable of making decisions about the game. The way it's structured, it's not the personnel, it's not the people, it's the way it's structured. It's just a continuation of it. And again, as Ewan said, World Rugby's not about fans. World Rugby's a officiating society, old man society, whatever it is, to enforce the charter of the game. The fans, that's all for the member unions to look after, and they all look after that differently. Everyone's got a different way to do it, so it just seems like we're wasting our time talking about it, wasting our time even discussing it. Like the whole thing was, as we predicted, a waste of time. So they've done it well. At least they've done it well. At least they're consistent. They're consistent. They do waste of time really well.
I don't question the motives of any. I think, Eddie Jones, you make a good point that you can't question the motives of anybody who's involved, because everybody is trying to do the right thing. But the governance of the sport is so inefficient and ineffective that we just can't seem to make progress. And interestingly, the RFU look like they have made some improvements around some reform around the council, and they've now approved that they can now only advise. They don't have any decision-making capability at all by the looks of things, and they're going to be reduced in their numbers quite substantially. And I'm just trying to find the reference here that I wrote down, which I can't. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so they've been through it, and the council will lose its right to pass regulation. The National Council now has the right to be consulted, and it'll be reduced to 44 from 62 by 2029. And I think this raises an opportunity, really, that the World Rugby Council needs to consider, or World Rugby needs to consider exactly the same thing, to give the power to the board to be able to make decisions. And so the actual World Rugby Council that's going to meet in June, 53 members, they've got to vote themselves out of business. They have to. We are going to get eaten alive by our competition. And I read the other day that in Germany there are now 110,000 registered players of flag football in Germany. Now, on the face of it, that might not seem a big thing, but Germany should be, I would have thought, a big market for rugby. But we've got the NFL in there, 110,000 now registered players, and we just can't seem to get out of the way of each other at the moment. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do, and I'm a little bit frustrated by the whole thing. But Alan Gilpin is coming on the program. And again, I don't think it's anything to do with the administration. It's just the shape, and really, it's the leadership has got to come from the council, and they've got to realise that this has got to change, because we clearly aren't able to make decisions. We aren't able to make progress. And any time it gets hard, it goes back to statements like that. And really, Matthew Raynal, you've got to give him some credit. Like, he absolutely played World Rugby off a break on the way into it. He got totally on the front foot. The lack of understanding about what in fact was going to be discussed, he just got straight on the front foot about it. And he just, it would... the old saying, if you don't tell your story, someone will tell it on your behalf. And, well, he did that and did that well. So well done to him. So anyway, any final comments there in terms of the governance of the games, people, or the shape of the game before we come to audience questions?
I think we all know the Australian situation, and there's obviously been lots of impediments over the years with, the voting and how the thing was structured. And that's sort of starting to change, but I guess rugby across the world's got a lot of structure, and there's a lot of, you were reeling off stuff there, council and this. I'm confused as to who actually does what. Other sports just have a commission and they just make decisions and get on with it. Like they've got the minimum amount of people and they make decisions fast, which is how business tends to work. But rugby seems to be the opposite. And I don't know, with all the brilliant people, all the smart minds that are supposedly involved in investing time, you'd think that they'd be able to make that comparison about where the sport is, whether it's going to, where the sport sits relative to a business model, and see that there's a problem. No business runs like rugby does. No business with shareholders and stuff runs like rugby union does.
Which is probably why we're broke. But the other point out of all of this as well is that there is allegedly there have been conversations about the global season, and there's nothing. There's no conversation. Have they happened? Have they not happened? Where are we at? There is no transparency about any of these discussions taking place. And again, I mentioned this on Friday. I don't see why 90% of what happened with the shape of the game could not have been broadcast live on YouTube for everybody to watch who would be interested in watching it. And they talk about the fans. There was really no fan representative there. There's an organisation called United Rugby Fans run by a guy called Mark Philpott, who's doing a great job in producing that sort of fan representative, but they weren't invited. So if we're talking about the fans, surely someone like him has to get invited. But certainly the transparency around this global season and the discussions around the global season, that's another issue that we sit here now wondering, well, where is that? Gus Pichot apparently is leading the conversation. Do we know anything about it? Is there anything reported? Are we told anything? Anyway, we will move on because I don't know how we're going to help secure the future prosperity of rugby union around the world if we don't know what's going on and if we have a governance structure that is fit for purpose 1972. But anyway, we'll move on to questions from the audience. The third voice. Z on TikTok says, in regard to Ireland versus England, as a South African, I can see this from a different perspective, but this could actually be a turning point for England. Moments of anger and humiliation often create reflection, accountability and growth. When a strong team is underestimated, it can quietly rebuild with focus and intent. That said, defeat can either strengthen a team or expose deeper issues. It all depends on how they respond. Ewen McKenzie, how do you think? What do you think of Z's observations there about Ireland versus England and how England may respond?
No, that's how it works. How sport works. It's a team versus team contest, and it'd be easy if you could predict all the results. You can't, and we saw results in Super Rugby. I didn't think Fiji would beat Wellington, the Hurricanes. Things happen. That's how sport works. And it's a function of what Eddie talked about the other week. He talks about attitude and intent and how people front up on the day and whether people are distracted. So, yes, there's crossroads all the time in rugby, in sport. But in rugby, there's always crossroads where you can change direction and try and fix matters. Sometimes they're tactical, sometimes they're just attitudinal, sometimes it's distractions, sometimes it's all three. Could be the coaching input. You've got to be able to reflect, and the coach has to reflect on himself first and then work his way through his underlings and then obviously the players as well. But the players need to reflect as well. So, yes, there's plenty of crossroads and you can change direction. They've got a good enough squad, no question about that. So, they've just got to get back and get the attitude right. They were brilliant early on. They've been brilliant last year. In the contest, but they were poor against Ireland. They just weren't in the contest.
Your thoughts, Eddie Jones, on how England may respond? Is this the moment? Is this something that they needed?
I was thinking about just World Rugby to start off with. I chatted to a New Zealand coach on the weekend. He said turkeys don't vote for Christmas. That just about sums
Well, they're
up
going to have
meeting.
to. They have to. The World Rugby Council in June needs to take the bit between the teeth and say we are no longer, and they still have a role.
53 of them
Don't
there,
get
mate.
me wrong. Yeah, but they need to have a role of some sort because we need to gather views from across the world and they need to come together. But they've got to follow the lead of the RFU and they need to reconsider their view, and we need to look at the governance top to bottom. And I know that there has been improvements over time.
Just on that, Pemby, we can say, look, this is the way they function. This was the moment. This was an opportunity, the opportunity prior to the World Cup. Now it's gone. Like they can't move fast enough to do anything now prior to the World Cup. So we'll wait and see. And I'm sure that we'll be talking come World Cup time about problems in the game that could have been resolved now that will affect the result of the World Cup. You watch.
Well, you're
everyone's
depressing me.
Everyone's going, why did we fix this? Or how can this happen? Da da da. Everyone, the fan bases will be saying, how can this possibly happen? Injustice, whatever. But here we are. We're talking about it. We've been talking about it for 6 months, and nothing's going to happen.
All right, Eddie. Back to England. Do you reckon this is the moment?
Yeah, they've been obviously going well. 12 wins in a row, playing with a lot of clarity, a lot of aggression, and the last couple of games will certainly give them the opportunity to change course again. They probably thought they were going in the right direction. A lot of it came on the back of 2 good wins in Argentina with under-strength squad, which George Ford did marvellously well. And now maybe he's had 2 average games and he seems to be the scapegoat for the losses, so he's out. That'll bring in a new 10. The new 10 will play slightly differently, so they'll have to change their game again. But the pressure for England, when they got to those 12 wins, the pressure was then to start playing better rugby. Like, that's what everyone was calling for. And in England, with the mass media and the social media combined, there's a lot of strong voices out there. And certainly wouldn't have affected Steve, but it would have affected the players. They felt they need to play a more balanced game of rugby, not a absolute kick-to-run game. And so now the pressure will be to win. So now they'll be happy. Everyone will be happy. It doesn't matter how they win. They kick the ball 50 times. No one will care as long as they win. And that'll go through. And it cycles in England. You win, and then the pressure is to play better rugby. You try to play better rugby. And why can't England consistently play better rugby? I don't think it's in their DNA. I think they've had periods. If you look at the history of the game, they've had very periods where they've been able to do that. Like Woodward had them playing like that for a very small period of time, It's in their psyche and their DNA to play that more constraining type of rugby, put people in small places and then bully them to death. And that's the way they play their rugby best. And there's nothing wrong with that. Well, I don't find anything wrong with that. There's all different ways to play rugby, Ewen and I came through Randwick. We ran the ball from everywhere, and that's right. That's right for Randwick. But it's not right for every team in the world, and everyone's got their own right to play the game. And I think, this will be a crucial period for England of how quickly they go back to their DNA. They start winning. They can rebuild again and have another good shot at the World Cup.
But if you think about England 2019 Rugby World Cup, particularly that performance against New Zealand in the semi-final, that's some of the best rugby that you would ever, some of the most entertaining rugby you would ever see. So you had them playing. You had them playing that way.
Yeah, but it's only small periods, mate. It's only small periods they can do it. And I think it gets back to the psyche of how they play the sport. Like, it intrigues me this, having coached a little bit around the world. I think every team's got a certain way they feel really comfortable about playing. And you can change that slightly, but to change it remarkably, it's difficult for England. Like, when you got Tuolangi and you want to play on the front foot, it's pretty easy, mate. Like, you got Tuolangi at pace, at his best, running, Billy Vunipola at his best, but they don't have guys like that now. Steve will need to rethink the use of Pollock. Like, he's probably not ready to be a starting guy at the moment. His best role is probably off the bench, as Nick Mallett found out with Bobby Skinstad. At that time when South Africa had that run 18 games, Skinstad was being, everyone was trying to push him into the starting side, but his best value came for that 20 minutes off the bench. And those brilliant players like that can give you great value. And starting him against Ireland didn't work, so, again, it's another reflection for Steve there.
If you think about players coming through in all the countries, they end up being coached by someone, club football, junior football, whatever. They're products of the previous system, of the system of rugby in that country, right? And so, the ex-players that stop playing, they drop back, maybe coach at their club, whatever. So the DNA that he's talking about permeates back down, and the young guys are picking up the cues as they come through. That's what they see and whatever. So therefore, you have an inherent DNA about how they play the game, and then that shows through. It shows through in the Kiwi games, right, when they play each other, right? There's no kicking. It's all about it's all about expression, using the ball and whatever, because that's fundamentally how they like to play. But they do have a tactical framework, but they come through with the same thing, and that's what Rassie's probably doing now in South Africa. He's establishing or re-establishing DNA, big forwards, but using them in a tactically in a good way, and in a way that allows him to bring players in all the time that can fit into the same structure of play. So they've got their the way they play, but the players are all coming through because they're all getting coached by players that have played in that system.
No, very true. All right, next question is from James Pigden. For Eddie, I was a schoolboy at Warwick when you were training there, and you gave me a couple of minutes on a technique point that made such a massive difference for my game, but also for communication, and I still think about it today. My question is, what is the biggest influences on your communication style, and how have you had to adapt it from job to job?
I can remember the session at Warwick. There was a young 10 there called Finn Smith, and they were all saying he's going to be the next 10 to come to play for England. Again, I was just thinking about what Ewan was saying. If you go to any England school or club, they stand deep, they stand wide. They got this philosophy of filling the pitch. And the faster the line speed, the deeper they get. Well, it's really hard to play good. Like, again, there's not one right way or one wrong way to do it. But generally speaking, to play good attacking rugby from deep, standing wide and deep, particularly against defences now that you've got 14 in the line, is very difficult. And so, that's what I mean about England. It's difficult for them to play good attacking rugby consistently. Now, that can change in time, like everything can change, but for the moment it's been 150 years it hasn't. So it might take another 150. It might be the same time that World Rugby come up with their strategy paper, 150 years' time. What were we talking about? Communication.
So the question is, and it's a good question when you think that you've coached in Japan, you've coached in South Africa, you've coached in Australia, you've coached in England, you've coached all around the world. How do you go about, and at different levels, how do you go about adjusting your communication style for different teams in different countries as per different jobs?
Well, I think generally the one-on-one with players, nothing's changed. It's still How can you help them? Showing them you care about them, before you can correct them. The whole saying is you got to show them care before correction. I think that's always the case. You're trying to get some sort of connection with the player, talk to them about something in their life or something that's happened or something in rugby, and then you're trying to build up a rapport with them, and then from there help them with their rugby. On a more general basis, I think, each country has its own specific way. Like the Japanese players like a lot of detail. They don't like just concepts, whereas Australian players like concepts and like to fill in the detail. England players want the detail, but if you give them too much, then they feel like they're overcoached. So it's just those little nuances, but essentially it's the same, and you just got to find out what works for that particular group of people.
Okay. What about for you, Ewen McKenzie, and all the different jobs that you've had, overseas, in Australia, at different levels as well? You've coached at different levels. How do you think about effective communication?
Well, obviously, you're coaching a team sport, but you're dealing with individuals, so the communication changes. I had a really good rapport with Quade Cooper, for instance. A lot of people struggled with Quade, but I embraced him and understood how I tried to understand how he thinks, and I sort of made him an important asset in terms of how we were thinking about the game, and then gave him ownership, and then so I was able to filter ideas through him and get him to help sell the ideas in the group, because everyone respected him for his the way he played the game. So that improved his relationship with the team, and so you get you can generate communication momentum in the group that way. When I coached in France, because I'd been there before, I decided I'd go there and I'd coach in French, which was made my life. Well, so I didn't have an interpreter. I just had to make sure my French was good enough, and I did all my game plans in French, and I did my team meetings in French, and I did all my communication to the players in French. So that was a real challenge for me, and it probably didn't help me initially, because I'm a detailed guy, so trying to get those concepts across, and clearly, as Eddie said, the French are far more relaxed about the detail. They want a bit of latitude to be able to play, whereas I was so trying to understand what was important to them, and there's lots of things that happen in French rugby. For instance, when you're in a squad environment, there's an expectation that everyone's going to get a go, whereas I'm more about rewarding players that are doing the right thing, and so to be in the team, you've got to earn your spot. And so that was the little things like that you learn as you go along, because there's an inherent culture about everyone's going to get a shot in a squad environment. So there are things that I learnt I could have done differently. You got to be open-minded, and you've got to be able to talk to people around the edges, not necessarily coaches, but just people that have been in the environment, and try and make sure you've got people filtering information back. If you're not getting the communication right, you want people to be telling you where some of the issues might be, so you can address them before they become real big issues.
Very good. All right. So to Neil Wassup on Spotify, big love from Germany, Leipzig. Rugby is still very small in Germany, and it still has a long way to go. But maybe a small positive step is that Pro7 Max is now broadcasting many matches, Six Nations, the New Nations Championship, the World Cup, and the Nations Series on free-to-air TV at no cost. That could give rugby a little boost and help bring it more into the public eye through media coverage. So that's news from Germany. Eddie Jones, did you ever come across Germany, rugby in Germany? Did you ever go there? Have you ever coached there? Have you any observations about rugby in Germany?
They went through a period when I was at England where they were doing really well in, I think it was, I can't remember, the second or third division, and they got up and they had there was a South African chemical guy who made a lot of money, had invested in a number of South Africans coming over, and so the sport was rising quite quickly, and they were sort of the one that was going to go through the divisions to catch up to Georgia in that sort of underneath Six Nations. But I think the chemical guy ran out of money and he pulled the pin like normally happens, and sort of that flow. I didn't ever see a great. I've been there a few times. Great rugby culture there. Very small sport, but you think of it, they're big people. They like to be organised. So they got all good attributes to be good rugby players. So if it ever could get a bit of a foot in, they've definitely got the talent base to do a little bit better than they're doing. But like all of those countries, they've got a structural problem. They've got a structural problem to get players through.
Yeah. Ewen McKenzie, did you ever have any exposure in your time in Europe to rugby in Germany?
Look, I've been to Germany. I've been all around Germany when I was at school, so I've been to Leipzig and other places. But no, the closest I got was when I was playing in France. I was working for a waste company, and I actually did a stint at Saarbrücken, which is just over the border from France, industrial area there. So I spent some time there, but not with rugby. And obviously been involved with the test match there at Strasbourg, and that's over the hundreds of years has been in Germany and been in France and been back in Germany, and they speak both languages. So I guess technically, yes, the test in Strasbourg was in Germany at some point in time.
Yeah. Oh, well, but that's a great initiative, though, isn't it? That that there is rugby going to be on free-to-air television, and people will be able to watch it.
Hopefully, someone's explaining it and getting people interested. But that's really good.
Indeed.
Yeah, it's great news.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, the next question from Jay Hickman from the UK on the survey, and please, if you do have time, jump into the description for the podcast and go to the link for the survey and fill that out if you would. It does help us to understand a little bit more about you and also to gather your questions. But Eddie Jones, who would win out of a combined North versus South Hemisphere 3-test series right now? So if you had the best of the North playing the best of the South in a 3-test series, who would win?
Where's it being played and who's the referee? And who's the TMO? I want to know who the TMO is. That's a good question. So you pick two fantasy teams. Well, if you see, look at the weight of power at the moment, clearly the most two powerful and have the deepest squads are South Africa and France. I think they're miles ahead. Ireland and England have got reasonable depth. New Zealand, Australia. New Zealand's got probably waning a little bit in that regard, and Australia's a bit problematic. It'd be an interesting exercise. I'd probably go for the Northern Hemisphere, but there'd be nothing in it, mate. There'd be nothing. It'd be a great game of rugby. That'd be a good initiative.
Yeah.
But you need a global season to do that. And I'll tell you what would have happened at that shape of the game. Last thing. I'll tell you, they would have talked about fans. They would have talked about commercialism. They would have talked about all the things that everyone agrees on, right? Yeah. They would have taken 80%. They would have given 10% the shape of the game, 10% of the laws. That's too hard. Let's get on. It's been a great meeting. Let's go now. I'll tell you, that's how it would have run.
Perhaps. Ewen McKenzie, who wins out of a combined North versus a combined South 3-test series?
It would be difficult to pick the team because, as we know from France in the World Cup soccer, like you can have all the world's best players in one team, but they don't pass each other the ball. So that just having good players isn't going to be enough. So it's going to depend on game style. The Southern Hemisphere would have to be playing something based on the South African style. Who could add from Argentina and Australia and New Zealand? Who could add to that? Maybe there's some backs, maybe. who could add to that style, I don't know. So you'd be predominantly South Africa, and then France has their unique way. They've been dominant. So if you invested other players into their style is a cultural style that comes through. Everyone sort of has this spirit. You wouldn't be able to necessarily mesh Irish players in with that French style and get a benefit, because you've got so there's a bit of a conflict in the style of play. I'm not saying that's a negative. I'm just saying it's just how players come through. So I guess a 3-test series, I think Southern Hemisphere will win the first one. Then I think by the third one, Northern Hemisphere would win. I just don't know who'd win the one in the middle. The question of who probably is who's the coach and whether they can get the cohesion. So it'll be a great communication exercise and trying to find a hybrid method of play given the types of playing styles that are involved. But it'd be a good series, yeah, really good. And as Eddie says, who's the ref and who's the TMO? Because that would be that would be my biggest concern. You tell me the ref and I'll probably tell you who's going to win.
So Jay Hickman goes on to say it would spark greater global interest and engagement from all parts of the rugby world simultaneously, and it might even produce fantastic rugby played by 30 genuine world-class players who are all on the same pitch playing different styles. It would be the most exciting thing in between World Cups. And I think Eddie Jones makes a point that if it ever did happen, you would need a global season. And let's hope that we do hear something about that global season sometime soon.
Pemby, you could probably, by putting limitations on preparation and things like that, who can put it together on a week's preparation? That's sort of like if you can constrain that, then it's obviously up to the individuals to be able to make it work as a team. So then they'll dumb it down a little bit and then try and find. So then the players are obligated to try and work together in a short space of time to make it work. So there's a little bit of barbarian element to that, but you've got the pride aspect of who's going to win. So in the end, they'll all want to win. So so who can put it together as a group. So I'd probably limit the preparation and see who can put it together.
All right, the next question is from M. Dempster from South Africa, and M. Dempster says or asks, do you think rugby is improving year by year, or was there an era that was better quality for the viewer? Ewen McKenzie.
I think it's generally improved. There's two eras for me. There's the era, the so-called amateur era, where the laws of the game were fundamentally different. You had rucking and there's a lot more self-management in the game. And then you've got the professional era that's got fitter, stronger, more athletic. The game's a bit more dynamic, but it's also encumbered by the safety elements and things that have been introduced. So that's taken out some of the self-regulation in the game and required and put more onus on the referee to manage. And then obviously they've introduced TMOs. So I kind of like the older era because it was just one referee and the players had to sort it out on the field. It was a bit more gladiatorial, I guess, but maybe not as attractive. I wonder if you played that era on the current pitches. I mean, we played in eras when the grounds were muddy and they weren't manicured fields that you get now. So the test matches are always played on really good surfaces, generally speaking. If you played in those conditions, would it be the same? I tend to favour the older era myself, but that's because the game was regulated by the players.
Okay, Eddie Jones, do you think rugby is improving year by year, or was there an era that was better quality for the viewer?
Well, I think as Ewan said, the amateur era was always like pure physical team play. Yeah, and it was quite a violent period. But out of that came some fantastic rugby. Just in my head, I've still got that picture of that 87 semi-final. Blanco in the corner. There's some beautiful fluid rugby came out of, some pretty ordinary rugby as well. And then if I look at the professional era, I think, we had the early 2000s where the game went through probably the best balance between contest and continuity. That early 2000s. There was a lot of good test matches, a lot of good Super Rugby. And we were involved in it, so you probably think back fondly to it as well. And then it was followed by that real turgid period where, there was 90 kicks in the game, 2007 World Cup, a lot of kicking. The good rugby is hard to remember from that period. And I think now the game has evolved itself into a good balance. As I said, the game's in good health. And if we can sort out a few things in the game now, I think it's set for a really golden period, a really good period.
All right. So the final question for this week, at least, from @999 Shasta, and it's to Ewen. Ewen, would you please expand on how the scrum has been depowered and the technical ability required? I attended a coaching clinic with you decades ago. It was clear back then you had an exceptional understanding of the game, the detail and its nuances. The scrummaging clinic was both eye-opening and brilliant. Would you please speak more about the scrum nuances and their importance?
Well, I mean, back in the day when you didn't have the referee controlling the entry to the scrum, it was about getting to the scrum first and getting set. Our complaint to the coach after the game, to Bob Dwyer, was always, the second rowers weren't there or the back rowers weren't on the scrum, when we engaged. So that's how fast it was. So it was completely different. And then the contest was between the front rows. The hooker had to strike for the ball. The loose head had to keep the scrum up. The tight head's trying to take the scrum as low as possible. So all of those things have been taken out of the game, all of those front row activities. So there was actually skill and strength and position. And the props weren't, some of the most effective props like a Probe, Jeffrey Probe and those sort of guys, they weren't big guys, but they were just technically very good. So you can go through. Bill Young was a guy in the later years who wasn't orthodox physically, but he was a very effective prop. These days, the skill sets required are more beyond that. It's more about ball carriers and tackling and things like that. The actual scrummaging thing is you have to have there's a lot of the individual skills taken out of it by the way that you have to enter the scrum and the fact that it's, even your arm position's regulated. A lot of things like that are regulated in the name of safety, which I understand, but it's taken all of the skill aspects out of it, so it's really just a straight pushing contest. Really, that's basically, it was before the other day. There's so many things you could do, and it was a real tactical challenge. It's hard to explain it in 5 minutes, but that's basically it. It's just all the skills have been taken out of it. It's just a straight pushing contest controlled by the referee.
So, Eddie Jones, a quick thought for you before you duck off, just around that point about modern scrummaging.
Well, you knows far more about it than me. I just tried to survive in there when I was in there. But watching scrummaging sessions, which I watch a fair bit of, the power they're able to generate now in a short space, and it's basically as Ewan said, it's timed off the referee, and it's a absolute power contest. Whereas in the time that we played, the referee didn't manage that. It was get in, work your angles, whoever could work together quicker, lower, higher, to the left, to the right, not push, do push, all those sort of things. And it was a real tactical battle. It was physically tough, but tactically, I know you and I used to enjoy that a lot, trying to outmaneuver the other pack. And that's right out of the game now. It's just pure power. And, boy, they generate some power.
Before you go, we had the Eddie Jones Book of the Week last week, which was the New York Jets coach. What book are you on to this week, Eddie Jones? What are you reading?
They're going to read that Jets one. It takes about 10 minutes, mate. A bit like the bloke's career.
What did you take from that book? Because we did read it out. What did you get from it?
No, it was a bit. Sometimes I just read books for a bit of fun. He's quite a jovial, American. It was good, and again he talks a lot about he talked three things about how you build a team: structure, personnel, chemistry. It's a pretty good summary.
Yeah.
You got to get the structure of the organisation right. You got to get the right people, and then how you build the chemistry of the team. So it's a nice, simple way. And sometimes from books like that, you just learn nice phrases that just can coin an idea that you've had. I thought that was, for a bloke who's not that bright, he came up with something pretty bright there. The other book I've been reading at the moment is called Attacking the Space, which is written by
Pull it up here.
a technical guy in England called Sam Larner.
Put it up and show it on the camera. Can you show it?
Here it is.
Okay, there it is.
And he's, he goes back and looks at data and sees how the game's evolved. He's done a pretty good job on it, mate. Pretty good job.
But what do you take from it, attacking the space? What are the three things that we learned? You haven't got into it yet.
Not enough, but again, just reinforces the importance of kicking. Kicking's always been big in the game. Like, kicking's always been a big part of the game. And for some reason, and I think it's because of that period in that middle 2000s where the game got kick obsessed. And I'll tell you now, like, the value of the kicking, I've been watching League One on the weekend, and one team's gone from not being able to win a game to now being able to win a couple of games on the back of a really good kicking game.
Yeah.
And that's allowed them then to play their style of rugby. So it's always been big. He makes a point in there that it's important, but it's not the only thing in the game, obviously. But to have a balanced game where kicking's a vital important part of it is one of the key points of the book. But I haven't read enough of it. I might be doing him not enough justice there.
We're not talking rugby, we're building it. Rugby Unity.
And Ewen McKenzie, anything for you? Thought of the week? Anything sort of reflecting back?
Well, just kicking on. I watched a bit of the Super Rugby on the weekend, and just picking up on Eddie's points of re-kicking. The Reds got up 38 kicks in the game. And now I'm not saying I don't know the nature of those kicks. I'm just looking at base stats. But Fiji beat the Hurricanes. Fiji kicked the ball 41 times. Now, I never would have thought I've seen that stat, but that's just how the game's evolving. So I'd love to know the percentage of those that were actually sort of attacking type kicks. Then you go to the classic derby games, Crusaders Chiefs, all right, 20 kicks versus 23. No kicking. Why? Because they want to run at each other, and that's what happens in New Zealand derbies. It's all about who can attack the best. Whereas traditional Australian derbies ends up being a bit of a defensive slog, but New Zealand's always about who can be the best attacking team. That was a great game, but only minimal kicking. So that's sort of unique to the circumstances. But fundamentally, the kicking's part of it. The Brumbies game didn't have much kicking either. That was a good game, but. It's still, to me, that I always look to see the kicking stats and just see what volume of kicking there was, and then try and see if I can work out how much of that was attacking kicks where we're trying to get the ball back, not just turnover kicks or territory.
And what
kicks.
did you see?
And I'm not big on kicking, but it's just you just have to do it to break the game up. If you just run all the time, it's too easy for the defence. So it's about balance, as Eddie just said. Balance and then, moving the defence around, but then using the kick to break up the line speed and exploit spaces on the field. You've got to get the ball in the spaces.
Do you think that there is improvement in Super Rugby by the teams? Is there certainly week one? I think we were reflecting it wasn't so good, but by week three?
I still see the box kicking is still not as accurate as it is in the Northern Hemisphere. So generally your box kick, you'd like to think you're going to get some sort of contest, but generally a lot of the kicks are sort of 5-10 metres too long, so it's basically a catch by the opposition, and then they can make a decision about what they do with the ball, but they've got the ball. You had the ball, now they've got the ball. Admittedly, they've got to work their way out of whatever territory they're in. So I don't see the accuracy in that side of the game, but the other aspects which you'd see in league, the grubbers from 13, I thought Fluke's Fluke's definitely worked on his kicking game in the off season because he was kicking a lot and I've never seen him kick a lot, but he kicked a bunch of times in the Reds game. So they've obviously worked on that as an addition to their attack. The 13 kicking the ball through, putting it through for the winger. It's pretty simple stuff, but he's still got to be able to execute it. So I'm seeing improvement in those types of kicks.
All right, very good. Now, there's lots of other rugby played over the weekend, and you can see lots of those results online. But in the international Rugby Europe trophy over the weekend, some big results. Poland, 73, defeated Croatia 3. Czechia, 87, defeated Lithuania 5. And in the women's rugby, Germany, 68, big winners over Finland. No score. So some big numbers racked up there in Europe. Now, just a reminder, people, to prepare for the Big Three, which is coming your way post Six Nations. You'll be able to register on our Substack to be able to get a digest, a weekly digest that will tell you everything that you need to know about rugby, everything that is popular in social media, everything that is popular in the media. Our Chris Skipper, the executive producer of this program, has been hard at work putting it together, working with the artificial intelligence technology to be able to pull that together. And we're certainly looking forward to launching that post Six Nations. So look forward there to the Big Three. It will be a one-stop shop. You won't have to go looking anymore for anything about rugby. It'll be delivered into your inbox all in one place, and it will also give us other things to talk about here on Rugby Unity. So there you go. I don't know. It's a bit of an interesting vibe, I think, isn't it, Ewen McKenzie, to today's program? Probably, disappointment to post the shape of the game that... Great aspirations. There is so much energy around the sport. There is so much positivity. And look, there is so much good that is going on, and you don't want to be a Debbie Downer about a lot of these things. But I don't know.
Eddie made the comment that that the game's potentially going into a golden period. So I think that's right. And that's where there's just a couple of subtle things that could make a big difference. And what they haven't done for me is they've just looked at the game, then they've looked at the commercial fans, etc., and said, well, let's focus on that and the game's all right. For me, they're tied together. I don't think you can just look at them. And I think you have to look at the product and say, what's the fan getting from the product? Is this a game for the expert, that you have to be an expert to watch it, to understand what's going on, the laws or whatever, or do we make the game fundamentally a bit more obvious and make it a contest? And if I wash it all down, all I'm interested in is getting more 15-on-15 time. That's all I'm saying. The rest of it is subtle, and a lot of the laws are already there. They're just a question whether they want to enforce them, like, straight feeds into scrum, things like that. So I'm more interested in that because I just can't imagine watching a World Cup semi or a final or something like that, and you're just watching inequity in numbers and fans, prospective fans. I'm not talking about rusted on barnacles. I'm talking about ones that we want to try and entice to the game, that they understand what's going on. That there's why is it 15-on-14 for the month, and what for? The reason for it has to be substantial, not some technical thing that where intent's not taken into account. That's me, and I know I harp on about it, but that's one of the things that I find a negative in the game. And it must be frustrating. I don't coach anymore, but it must be frustrating for coaches to go out there and do everything you possibly can, work on the 1%ers, and then have those situations crop up that affects the result. I'd find that hard to swallow.
One of the things, obviously, I've always had a focus on, what happens off the field. And I just think we just need more communication. We need more transparency. And if they're going to do presentations like the weekend, I just do not understand why we all can't watch it. if everyone's
agree.
interested, to be able to see the presentation of the fan experts who came in to describe and explain to people what it is, or the other discussions that are there. Open the windows, let the light in. And again, I don't think it's ill intent. I don't think anyone's not trying to do the right thing. I just don't think it's not a muscle that World Rugby has exercised. And I think traditionally they've done things this way, where they do it, quietly. They do it behind closed doors. But I think in this day and age, you can't do that. If we are going to open it up, if we are going to grow the game, if we are going to bring people in, we need to put transparency at the heart of everything that we do. And if there's a reason to close it off, close it off. But if there's not a very good reason to close it off, let's explain it. Let's talk about it. Let's let everyone be clear about what's going on so we can understand what's happening. Because it's when these...
Well, I think that hopefully transparency would give us more expedited outcomes too, whereas it just seems to take time. Well, time gets lost in the secrecy, and they go, okay, we make a date and everyone can be there for the shape of the game. That's like 4 months or 5 months on from where we talk. We were talking last year. 5 months later, we get to that, and then nothing's really happened. But if we can do things more transparently, then decisions can be made more on the run.
Yeah.
Because you might find out that the fan base might actually be up for it, be up for some of the decisions rather than sort of not present them to them.
Yeah.
So,
and the other
it's like
point,
a shareholders meeting. Shareholders meeting, they have them every year. There's a shareholders meeting, gives everyone a chance to say what they think.
Mm. And this governance point, I really do. I think the RFU have taken a lead here in terms of the way that they've managed the modernisation of the role of their council. World Rugby has to do the same thing, and in June there needs to be substantial change. We've now got a head of rugby, Mark Robinson, an experienced administrator, and he needs to take the lead, and we need to speed things up. We need to move. We need to be more open, more transparent, and let's get moving and let's make these changes. And let's welcome in this golden period that we know or all hope that is coming sometime soon. So anyway, people, thank you so much for joining us once again. And thanks again for your enthusiasm on social media. Please keep the comments, keep the questions coming, whether it's on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever it is that you engage with us, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. We do read everything. We read everything and we do our best to get back to you as best as we possibly can. And we certainly look forward to the Third Voice contributing to the program every week because, as you can see, it makes it a better program because we're talking about the things that are important to you. So anyway, a big thanks to you. A big thanks again, as always, to Eddie Jones and Ewen McKenzie. But people, please, until next time we meet, please be kind to each other. My name is David Pembroke and it's bye for now.